Today, I'm talking with Nick Manzo, who has a background in opera and musical theater, about his journey into voice acting. I hope you enjoy our conversation.
Tell me who you are and how you got involved in voice acting.
My name is Nick Manzo. I am an opera singer. I've been doing that for about 20 years, but I've always wanted to be a cartoon character. I remember when I was 4 years old, my brother and I was the kind of kids that like we had that one or two movies on VHS with yes, VHS. The gray hair don't lie. Anyway, we would watch the same movie over and over and over again. And I mean, we were probably watching Disney's Robin Hood for like the 100th time, and my mom is pretending she still likes it at this point. And, I asked her, how did they make this? Now I'm 4 years old, and she basically explained to me, I don't remember exactly what she said, but she explained it to the point that I understood. It was drawings and people would talk, and they had a microphone and then somebody would come in and put their voices over. And I remember as a 4-year-old kid, the idea of a cartoon talking and my voice coming out was the coolest thing I'd ever thought of, like, ever. I was just, like, entranced by this. That was sort of around the time of the golden era of children's animation. Because I mean, like, right after that, like, 1985, 1989 was when the year that I got my first NES, and it was the best day ever. But then all of a sudden, we had Batman the Animated Series come out. We had the Disney Afternoon. We had Animaniacs shortly after that. We had all these great cartoons kind of hit all at the same time. But I'll tell you, the one person that I credit with really making me want to be an actor in a cartoon was Kevin Conroy. Kevin Conroy as Batman, to me, changed the way that I perceived animation because, like, he wasn't a goofy Batman. He wasn't like the Adam West Batman. And the show did not feel that it had to dumb any of this stuff down for kids. It spoke to me like I was an adult. They had a mission. It was to make a short movie that kids could watch, essentially, and follow it from beginning to end, not get bored, and really want to know what the ending was going to be. And it had that like 1930s pulp feel, and it was so cool and so awesome that, like, I remember even in college when I hadn't seen it for years, I never forgot that show. And then, of course, when I was in college, I suddenly had money and could buy these things. And I found it on DVD and I bought it again. And I was like, this is just as good as I remember it. Because I mean, there are so many things you go back to and they disappoint you, because it was like, man, I was a kid when this happened. But getting back to college, my grandfather and my grandmother were big opera people. They loved the opera. They kind of were married and started a family in what they call the golden age of opera, which was the 1950s. And it was because, like, the Metropolitan Opera would finally broadcast on Sundays so that everybody could hear the music. And so my grandfather just really fell in love with it. And, like, he didn't really know anybody who could sing or, like, was interested in this stuff besides my grandmother and his kids. And so when I actually started to show a really good talent for singing, my mom decided, well, he's going to be an opera singer. And I really liked opera too. I remember when I was like 5, 6 years old, I saw a movie version of The Magic Flute. And, like, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. It had dragons, it had evil witches, it had, all the cool stuff. Then I was 9, we went to see a production of Faust, and it just blew my mind. Now, I will admit I fell asleep at one point, but that's just because I was 9 years old and, it was a long 4-hour opera, but I still thought it was really cool. So when I went to college, I went into it for music and I wanted to be an opera singer. And unfortunately, my career did not pan out as I wanted it to in operatics, mostly because of my location, and I was tied to it because my mom got really sick. I had to drop out of college to take care of her. Then as she started to get better about 10 years later, my grandfather got dementia, and I had to kind of again put my dreams and everything on hold. And last year, I got really, really, really depressed. I'm not going to get too dark here, but it was to the point where I was really feeling like I had accomplished nothing, like my entire life had no meaning. And I had met a guy who was a voice actor who became something of my mentor now. I don't want to name drop him because I don't want to embarrass him, but he basically told me, Nick, you've been talking about becoming a voice actor since I've known you, which is about maybe 6 years. And we both met because we're both nerds. But anyway, he was like, why don't you actually just do it? And I was like, no, that's something other people do. And he said, Nick, let's talk about this. Real talk. You get yourself together some money and I will make you a demo reel. So I did. We made a demo reel and I started sending in auditions. He told me, okay, you kind of put the cart before the horse. You got your demo reel before you had decent equipment. Now let's go ahead and get you some decent equipment. So I worked my butt off to go ahead and get some decent equipment. I got my Rode NT1. I got my audio interface, which by the way, I have a lot to say about the Scarlett later, but then everything just started clicking, and, like, tomorrow will be the start of my 10th month seriously going for this. I tried to do audiobooks and stuff before, and every once in a while I try something, but, like, it never really panned out because I didn't have the equipment and everything that was necessary to work with, and I didn't have, my buddy who made my demo reel yet, and my mom was very impatient with the process, and then a bunch of other things happened to me, but, like, I guess if I would have anything to say after all that, it's do not ever give up just because it gets tough. And if I had it to go all over and, tell my younger self anything, if they say like, if you had one thing you could say to yourself 20, 30 years ago, what would it be? And I would be, don't stop just because it's hard. And that's basically where I'm at right now. Tomorrow starts my 10th month as a serious character voice actor, actually pursuing it as another career. And I've already gotten like over 70 parts, and it's just like they keep coming, which is really good. But at the same time, it's just like I got to stay on it because you can't just quit once you feel like you're at the apex because you're never actually at the apex. There's always another mountain to climb. And so you never want to stop. You got to keep going. You got to grab the bull by the horns and just keep going.
So tell me a little bit more about your setup and the equipment that you have.
Well, I have a nice gaming laptop that was a very, very appreciated friend's Christmas gift to me. And I hadn't really used it for gaming that much, because I never seemed to have the time. I was always working. Like I said, when I used to do audiobooks, I started off with a mic that was a Blue Yeti. It's not bad at all, but it's not going to necessarily be your best mic going forward because it's more of a podcasting mic. Perfectly serviceable for a lot of things, but you really want to try and get yourself something better. My friend and mentor, who I mentioned earlier, he suggested the Rode NT1 Signature Series mic, and that's what I went ahead and got. A friend of mine who is a musician just told me, okay, you just need an audio interface. He suggested to go with the PreSonus audio box. It's not a bad setup at all, but it's kind of limited in what it can do for you, and the sound can be hit or miss. And for whatever reason, it sometimes picks up iPhone signal as interference. So you either have to put your phone in airplane mode or just keep it as far away from it as possible, which you don't really want to do because you want to have the gain under your control. So I upgraded to a Scarlett Solo, and I will immediately tell everybody, do not get a Scarlett Solo if you want to be a voice actor. It's a perfectly fine, perfectly serviceable audio interface. The problem is that the microphone is always going to be an audio too. And what I found working with Audacity is that it's going to screw up where your sound is actually going to peak because it will hard fix it on mono at -6 decibels, which will make you very, very, very quiet. And I know this is all very technical. Look up on the internet, they'll be able to explain it more. My friend spent 3 hours with me yesterday trying to figure out what was wrong, why I was going so quiet, in all of my auditions. And it turned out it was because the software and the audio interface talk to each other in different languages. And so they try and translate it into this weird pidgin that ends up making you really, really quiet. And so we went through and we fixed it, but my goodness, it's a lot of steps for nothing, something that should just happen automatically. So I'm looking to get a new audio interface, but like seriously, do your research, get yourself a setup that is going to work for you. I use Audacity and it's not bad and it's free, which is a big point in its favor, but it does some weird stuff.
Does anything from your opera background translate over to voice acting?
Oh, absolutely. The biggest thing is breathing. I tell everybody whenever I voice act, unless there's like a specific call for it or a need for a breath and a cadence or like a sigh or something like that, my characters don't breathe. They just don't. Because what I'll do is I'll just be going on this long tangent and then I'll just like get as much breath out as possible. And then I'll, in the middle of it, because this is my mic, I'll just be, and I'll just edit that out later, or I'll pause it and then I'll keep going, so that there's no big breath in there to get everything up. But you always want to breathe from your gut. What actually causes projection, we learned this when I took vocal pedagogy in college. The term for it is the coolest thing ever. It's called muscular antagonism. And what it is that you cannot control your diaphragm on a conscious level, but you can tell it kind of what you want it to do. And so, like, if you put your hand in front of your face and you like you want to blow out a candle or blow up a balloon or something like that, that's muscular antagonism at work, because what's happening is your diaphragm is not yielding to the abdominal muscles, and it's not putting the pressure on your lungs as quickly as normal for it to come out. It focuses the air forward, if you will, and it gives you that kind of operatic, heroic sound, or just a lot of projection. And that really helps in voice acting because it gives you like more of a vocal presence. I went to a panel with Lee Talker on it, or Lee Toker. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. That is a very wonderful man, by the way. He's just the friendliest guy. He was Snips from My Little Pony, and my mustache, the sea serpent from the first episode of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic. Super nice guy. And at this panel, I asked him the question, like, how does singing translate over to voice acting? And he said, there are so many things that have a musicality to them, and people with a natural musicality to their voices tend, in my opinion, to have the best sort of like ability to switch and create completely different characters. Like we can switch over from sort of sounding that like this kind of way here, and then we can switch over and go into sort of the deeper and more mysterious sections of the voice. It's kind of singing, but it's also like every sentence that you say has a natural musicality to it. Like if I were to do it like this, it kind of sounds like I'm asking an awkward question. There's all these wonderful musical things that we do naturally without even thinking about them. The difference between talking and singing, there is a world of difference, but at the same time, it's not that different, because birds, humans, and I think, whales of some types are the only things that really sing. We have this musicality to us, and like everything else in the world, as wonderful as it is, it doesn't necessarily have that musicality to it. Like if I say a sentence, you can actually find the notes that I'm using, on a sheet of music. It's really cool. I love that kind of thing. And there are times when, I will approach a role in a very musical way, particularly if it's kind of a bizarre or sing-songy or maybe even kind of scary character. You can kind of do a very musical thing with it. It adds to that atmosphere. Is this a scary character? Then I can sort of make it a little bit sing-songy, or something like that, or if it's a heroic character, I can say, stop! I will not allow you to do that. And you can hear the levels, the notes changing.
Yeah.
You want to keep that in mind, and it really informs character a lot, and it informs sort of the feel of what you're doing a lot. There was a song that I sang in The Mystery of Edwin Drood that really is a great vocal exercise if you're about to have a character who's doing a lot of techno babble or something like that, with a lot of really bizarre sort of, you have to spit out really crisp things. And there's a song about how being an actor is sort of like having multiple personalities, and it's called Both Sides of the Coin. If you've never heard it, look it up. But the patter section of that, I sometimes use as a vocal exercise because I will never forget it. I will be cold in my grave, and this song will still be running in my brain somehow. It goes, hey penny, one penny, tuppenny, threepenny, 12 to a shilling, 'twas said to a florin, and would you not fancy the currency foreign to find the same face on both sides of the coin? Bob is your uncle, from pennies to guineas, a two-sided mint is a rule, not exception, and would you not feel with the fool of deception to find the same face on both sides of the coin? Da, 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 da. I love that
Nice.
song so much.
Tell me about some of the characters that you've played and the projects that you've been in.
I just was cast a couple of months ago and can finally talk about it. I am Commissioner Gordon in Batman: The Protocol, which that is going to be so cool and just a lot of fun. Like I said, going all the way back, again, Batman was really what made me want to be a voice actor. I don't know if I could ever play Batman, but I know I could play a good Jim Gordon, because they said specifically they wanted that sort of transatlantic accent. And as a kid, my brother was older, so he always got to play Batman when we would go out, and I had to play everybody else. And so somebody that I would often play as was Commissioner Gordon. A line that I always used to get into characters from Batman: Mask of the Phantasm, which, if you've never seen it, that is the best Batman movie nobody's ever heard of. Watch it. Great Batman movie. And he's like, he didn't do it. The Batman does not kill, period. You want him, you get him. I'll have no part of it. Whenever I think that line, it gets me into the character really well. I can go on and, tell everybody, nothing is worth your life. Walk in pairs, things like that when he's making an announcement about how, if the streets are not safe right now. Jim Gordon, I've actually played him like 3 or 4 times in different things, but this is the one that I feel like has the power to really grab the audience's attention. I've been Iron Man in a comic dub that we did of I believe it's the Hickman Avengers story arc that's like the biggest crossover of any Avengers storyline. And that was really cool because it was kind of out of left field. I didn't even audition for it officially. The guy came to me and he was like, "Hey, I really loved your audition as this character." And I didn't remember who it was because it had been like maybe a week and a half and I'd done a lot of auditions between that. I was like, "Oh, let me go listen to it." And I was like, that's literally just my voice kind of being a jerk. And he was like, "Well, it was great." He goes, "Let me hear you do that, but sound more heroic and intelligent." So I'm like, "So I sound like a coward and an idiot?" No, but I knew what he meant. And so I just did the lines and he was like, "Dude, that's awesome. You are my Iron Man." And so, I get to be Iron Man. I just wish that in the first episode that's like actually hit on YouTube right now, I just wish that the credit picture that had Nick Manzo as, with Iron Man on it wasn't him getting his butt handed to him. But, that's just a personal preference thing. I was Hoss in a comic dub of Ghost Rider, and he's this cowboy demon. And I mean, I wish this guy was a recurring Ghost Rider villain. Apparently, he's only ever appeared in that one story arc. Because I mean, he's just like everything you would want, and just he's so awful, but he's so much fun. I have upcoming roles that haven't really come out. I would say those are probably my top 3 right now that I'm, like, really excited about and really jazzed for. Oh, yeah, there's a dub of a manga called, Monsters We Make. I love everybody on that team. They're wonderful people, and I play Detective Kimbrick, who, I mean, again, it's just kinda my voice, my regular voice, and it's just like, he's this sort of rookie detective. He's training under this older guy, and he kind of doesn't take his mentor very seriously because he thinks he's kind of an insane conspiracy theorist, kind of cynical. You can kind of tell he maybe was a high school athlete. And he's just smart enough to be a detective, but of course he's not putting all the pieces together and everything. And he's a young kid, he's got his whole life ahead of him, and he's just sort of like, "Boss, everybody at the station thinks you're mental," that kind of thing. He's got that cynicism about him, and I love him too. There's a few things I can't really even talk about yet. I am going to be in the production called New Dawn of Harmony. It actually started off as a My Little Pony fan project. It's being rebranded as a completely new sort of original IP, which I think is wonderful. So I'm just extras in that. But here's the thing, extras is still a real thing, and like, don't feel bad because you got cast as an extra. Feel good that you got cast, because without the extras, there would be no extras. I mean, it's a wonderful thing. You get to be on the side, and like, there's a lot of like really super talented people in that production. Being in the same room, as if you will, is a wonderful experience, and being able to work beside them, and you get to point at yourself later on and tell everybody, it's me, so don't feel bad if you get cast as extras. Feel good that you got cast.
What advice would you have for beginning voice actors?
Besides, don't give up just because it's tough. There are so many free resources out there to help you become a better voice actor. Watch them on YouTube, listen to them. There's only a few things in this world that we have control over. And one of them is your attitude, and the other one is your actions. Okay. You cannot control the storm, but you can control your sails. And if you are going to persist, in being mediocre, that's just not a good thing. You're always going to sort of be on that level. You must seek out wise counsel to improve yourself, because unwise people are not unwise because they lack wisdom. They are unwise because they don't see where they're making mistakes and adjust and seek wise counsel to work on those weaknesses. Don't think that you're dumb because you lack knowledge. Think that you're dumb because you're not looking for that knowledge, that you're not seeking it out. Look for those resources. Listen to people. Befriend people. Make friends. That's what we're all doing here. Make as many friends as possible, and like, as long as they're okay with it, pick their brains, because like, what I found, like, when I started off, I thought it was going to be sort of like, the theater kids, And the theater kids are all very cutthroat. They're like, no, it's my part. I'm going to get the part. Voice actors don't have that kind of thing because we know it's so much less about you and so much more about what can you do and will the director like it over another person's take. And I mean, it's like I tell everybody, it's not rejection, it's selection. So voice actors help each other out a lot. Like, take that advice, listen to it, internalize it. Don't ever take advice as a personal attack. And another thing I will say, do not get a demo reel until you have decent equipment. Do not put the cart before the horse, because I did that and I'm still kind of paying the price for that mistake. Okay. And when I say decent equipment, I mean just equipment that's going to last you a long time. You want a decent workhorse microphone. You want a decent audio interface. Even the Scarlett, even though I kind of railed about it earlier, it's a decent interface. You just have to know how to mess with it and understand its limitations. And again, that's all back to knowledge. So the biggest piece of advice that I would say, aside from don't give up just because it gets hard, it will get significantly less difficult if you listen, if you learn, and if you keep yourself open-minded to new ideas, new concepts, and especially new techniques. Do not ever take education as attack. People are trying to help you. If they wanted to hurt you, they would just not tell you any of these things, because then you'd be stumbling around in the dark. Okay. Don't ever think that because somebody says, "Oh, that sounds a little weird," that they're saying that you sound weird or you sound bad. They might be saying, "Do this instead," and then your entire world starts to change. Like, my friend helped me for 3 hours yesterday trying to figure out what was going on, what the weird thing that was not happening properly was. And once we figured it out, it kinda took a lot of workarounds, and I'm still kind of like, I need a new audio interface." But I'd rather know that than not know that and continue to have the same issues that I was having before. So remember, if somebody wants to help you, as long as it's good advice, take it. It's not an admission of weakness. Being weak is staying the same. It is strong, and it takes courage to change and to acknowledge where you went wrong. Go ahead and take that to heart. Do not ever reject good, solid educational advice, because not everybody's going to be willing to give it to you, number one. And number two, there are so many free resources out there from people who know these things. Okay. Listen to them, take their advice, and educate yourself.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. It was wonderful talking to you.